conference room was
Good morning,
silent,
gentlemen.
the air thick with tension.
Let's not waste any time.
Eliza, the formidable CEO of a multi-billion-dollar corporation, glared across the table, her eyes icy and unyielding. She was known for being ruthless, a woman who demanded perfection
So, based on these
and punished
projections,
any
we can
sign of
expect a
weakness.
significant
But
increase in
today,
Q4.
as her gaze
certainly
locked onto
encouraging news.
David,
So
an
what are you thinking
ordinary
about?
single dad who had
So,
just
what
joined
I
the
said.
company as an office assistant,
Just how
something
nice
shifted.
this is.
David wasn't fazed. The other employees stiffened as Eliza's voice cracked the silence, her words laced with threat. "Peek once more and you're fired." It wasn't the first time she'd threatened someone, but this time, David's response would change everything. Calmly, almost casually, David met her steely gaze. "I didn't peek," he said, his voice steady, "but I won't let anyone push me around either." In that moment, Eliza realized that David, this seemingly insignificant man, was unlike anyone she had ever encountered. David sat quietly at the back of the room, watching as the company's top executives discussed the quarterly results. He wasn't part of this meeting. He was just a new guy, an assistant, trying to make sense of the corporate world. He had never imagined he'd find himself in a room like this, let alone in the crosshairs of the CEO herself. Eliza entered the room with her usual grace. Her sharp heels clicked across the floor, her dark eyes scanning the room with a look that could freeze anyone in their tracks. She was a woman who got what she wanted, no matter the cost. Every movement she made exuded power, and every word she spoke carried the weight of her empire. David, trying to blend into the background, couldn't help but feel a bit out of place. But then, as the discussion unfolded, he found himself staring at a chart on the presentation screen, trying to understand the numbers that didn't quite make sense to him. A slight rustle in the corner caught his attention, and before he realized it, his eyes had drifted over the table, focusing on a set of financial reports in front of Eliza. She hadn't noticed, but one of the executives, eager to please, glanced at David's direction. It was then that Eliza's cold gaze met his. "Peek once more and you're fired." Her voice rang out, piercing the stillness of the room. David's heart didn't race. His hands didn't tremble. He remained seated, looking up at her. The room was already shifting its weight onto him, awaiting his response. The other executives stiffened in anticipation, ready for the drama that was about to unfold. Everyone expected David to back down, to apologize, to grovel. That's how people normally responded to Eliza's wrath. But not David. He simply raised his chin, his face betraying no fear, no uncertainty. "I didn't peek," he said, his voice as calm as if he were discussing the weather. "But I won't let anyone push me around either." The words echoed in the room, reverberating off the walls. No one had ever spoken to Eliza like this before. For a moment, she was taken aback. Her lips parted, but she didn't speak. Her icy demeanor faltered for a split second, just enough for David to catch a glimpse of vulnerability behind those piercing eyes. For the first time, Eliza felt uncertain. She had never been challenged so directly by someone so ordinary. And yet, there was something about David's confidence, the calmness in his voice, that unnerved her. The other employees shifted uncomfortably, unsure of how to react. But no one dared to speak. This wasn't just any reprimand. It was a battle of wills. Over the next few days, Eliza couldn't stop thinking about David. She kept replaying the scene in her head. His calm, unwavering demeanor in the face of her wrath. It was rare for anyone to stand their ground with her, let alone an assistant who was far beneath her in rank. At first, she told herself it was nothing, just a momentary lapse in judgment on her part. But every time she saw David in the office, something tugged at her. There was an unspoken tension between them now, a curiosity that Eliza couldn't shake. David, for his part, didn't make any special effort to approach her. He simply did his job, keeping his head down and his focus on the tasks at hand. But as he worked, he began to notice Eliza's subtle glances toward him. Her eyes, once cold and distant, had softened. He knew she was intrigued, but what was she really thinking? Days turned into weeks, and Eliza's curiosity deepened. She found herself seeking out moments when she could interact with David. Their conversations started off strictly professional, but slowly, they began to open up. She learned about his life as a single dad, his struggles, and his quiet strength. David, in turn, discovered that beneath Eliza's hard exterior was a woman who had once been vulnerable, who had experienced heartbreak and loss. They weren't so different after all. One evening, as they worked late together in the office, Eliza surprised herself by asking David to join her for coffee. It was an unspoken invitation, but David understood. They sat in the quiet of the empty cafe, the low hum of conversation in the background. "It's strange," Eliza said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "I've never met anyone like you before. Most people either fear me or try to manipulate me. But you're different." David took a slow sip of his coffee, his eyes meeting hers. "I don't fear you," he said simply. "I just respect you, and I don't think anyone can truly understand you without seeing the person you really are. Not the CEO, not the Ice Queen, just Eliza." Her heart skipped a beat. She had never been called by her real name in such a raw, honest way. For the first time, she felt seen. Truly seen. Over the coming weeks, Eliza and David's relationship began to change. What started as mutual curiosity blossomed into a deep, unexpected friendship. Eliza found herself confiding in David, sharing thoughts and fears she had never told anyone. David, in turn, admired Eliza's strength, but saw the cracks in her armor, cracks she had never let anyone else see. It wasn't long before they realized that their connection ran deeper than they had anticipated. What had begun as a simple exchange of words had slowly turned into something more, a bond built on mutual respect, understanding, and a quiet, undeniable attraction. The company's biggest merger yet was on the horizon, and Eliza was under more pressure than ever. She needed someone she could trust, someone who could see things from a different perspective. And that someone was David. As the deal reached its final stages, Eliza called David into her office. "I need your help," she said, her voice no longer the icy command she once wielded. It was softer now, tinged with vulnerability. "I can't do this alone." David stood across from her, his gaze unwavering. "You don't have to," he replied. And in that moment, everything shifted. They weren't just a CEO and an assistant anymore. They were equals partners in a way that neither had expected. Eliza's heart had opened in a way she never thought possible, and David, for the first time in years, felt like he had found a place where he truly belonged. Together, they faced challenges, not as employer and employee, but as two people who had found something real in the most unexpected of places. As the weeks passed, David and Eliza found themselves working closely together. They both carried the weight of their professional responsibilities, David, quietly assisting Eliza with the most delicate aspects of the company's merger, and Eliza steering the ship through rough waters. Yet, it was not just business that kept them close. It was the growing understanding they shared. One evening, after a particularly grueling day at the office, Eliza found herself alone in her penthouse apartment, staring out over the city skyline. The weight of the upcoming merger loomed large. But there was something else on her mind: David. The man who had once stood before her unshaken, defying her icy demeanor, had now become more than just an assistant. He had become her anchor. She picked up her phone, hesitated, and then dialed David's number. It was late, but she needed to hear his voice. "David," she said, her tone softer than usual. I need to talk to you. David had just settled in for the night when his phone buzzed. He didn't expect to hear from Eliza outside of office hours, let alone at this hour. Of course, Eliza, he said, his voice calm as always. What's on your mind? I don't know, she replied, her voice trailing off. It's just been one of those days. You know how... Island. David could hear the tension in her voice. And for a moment, he didn't know how to respond. But he had learned over time that sometimes the best thing to do was simply listen. Do you want to talk about it? There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Eliza spoke again. I feel like I'm losing control. The merger is taking up all of my time and now I'm just tired. Tired of always being in control. Tired of pretending I've got it all figured out. David's heart went out to her. It wasn't the cold, calculating CEO he was used to. This was Eliza, the woman who was vulnerable, struggling with the same doubts and insecurities everyone faced. You don't have to pretend with me, Eliza, he said softly. You don't have to carry it all alone. Her breath hitched slightly, and for the first time, David heard a faint tremor in her voice. I don't know how to stop pretending, she admitted. I don't know how to let go of this persona I've built for myself. David paused, then answered with quiet sincerity. Maybe it's time to start. Let me be here for you, Eliza. Not as your assistant, not as someone who works for you, but as someone who cares about you. The following weeks marked a shift in their dynamic. The boundaries between employer and employee blurred in ways neither of them had anticipated. They spent long hours together, not just working, but talking about their pasts, their dreams, their fears. Eliza began to open up more, revealing the pain she'd buried for so long, the early struggles of trying to prove herself in a world that saw her as nothing more than a cold, calculating businesswoman. David, in turn, shared his own story. His life as a single dad, the loss of his wife, the overwhelming responsibility of raising a child on his own. He'd never allowed himself to truly grieve, always putting his daughter first. But now, as he talked with Eliza, he realized that maybe he, too, had been pretending. Pretending to be okay. Pretending to have it all under control. One night, after a long day, Eliza invited David to her apartment for a late-night drink. It was the first time they'd spent time together outside of work in such an intimate setting. The atmosphere between them had shifted. What had once been formal and distant was now comfortable, even relaxed. As they sat together, Eliza leaned back on the couch, her eyes softening as she looked at David. You know, she said, a smile tugging at the corners of her lips. I never thought I'd be sitting here with you like this. You've got a way of making everything seem easier. David met her gaze, his heart beating a little faster than usual. It's not about making things easy. It's about being there when things are hard. Eliza's smile faded slightly as her expression softened. And for a moment, it was just the two of them, sharing a quiet understanding. I'm not used to letting people in, she confessed. I've spent my whole life keeping everyone at arm's length. David leaned forward, his voice steady and sincere. Maybe you don't have to keep everyone at arm's length. Maybe it's okay to let someone in. For a brief moment, their eyes locked. The unspoken tension between them, undeniable. The quiet of the apartment seemed to envelop them, and everything outside of that room faded away. Then, without warning, Eliza closed the distance between them. She kissed him softly at first, testing the waters. But when David responded, pulling her closer, the kiss deepened. It was more than just a kiss. It was the release of all the tension, all the unspoken emotions that had been building between them. For the first time, Eliza allowed herself to feel vulnerable, to let go of her carefully constructed walls. And David, too, felt something shift within him, a sense of belonging, of connection that he had long since given up on. The next few days were a whirlwind. The merger was nearing completion, and Eliza was consumed with finalizing the deal. But despite the pressure, her thoughts kept drifting back to David. Their relationship, though new, felt different, more real than anything she had experienced before. She couldn't deny the chemistry, the connection between them that had grown from simple respect to something more profound. David, too, had begun to realize that his life was changing. The work that had once felt like a burden was now a shared responsibility, something he tackled with Eliza by his side. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about them together, building something new. The merger was finally complete, and the company had emerged stronger than ever. Eliza stood in her office, looking out over the city, the weight of the world on her shoulders. But this time, it didn't feel so heavy. She turned to find David standing in the doorway, his familiar calm presence grounding her. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and pride. David smiled, his eyes softening as he looked at her. "We did it together," and in that moment, they both knew that this was just the beginning. The success of the merger had solidified Eliza's position as one of the most powerful CEOs in the industry. The media buzzed about her success, but behind the headlines, there was something deeper, something more personal. As she walked through the glass-walled halls of the company, her thoughts often wandered to David. She couldn't help but smile when she saw him in the office, his usual calm and steady demeanor giving her a sense of peace that nothing else could. It was as if he was the anchor she had been searching for her entire life. He made her realize that there was more to life than just the cold corporate world. And for the first time in years, she felt like she could breathe, like she could be herself. One evening, as the office began to empty out, Eliza found herself waiting for David to finish a few final tasks. The building was quiet, the hum of the computers the only sound in the stillness. She walked into his office, her heels clicking softly on the floor. "Are you almost done?" she asked, leaning against the doorframe. David looked up from his laptop, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Just wrapping up a few things." "I'll be right there." Eliza smiled, crossing the room and sitting on the edge of his desk. "You know, I never thought I'd be this happy working late, but it's different now. Being with you, it just makes everything seem easier." David paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "I feel the same way. I never expected this us." He stood up, walking around the desk to stand beside her. There was something unspoken between them now, a connection that was as undeniable as it was deep. Eliza met his gaze, her heart beating a little faster. "I've been thinking a lot about what happens next," she said quietly. David raised an eyebrow, sensing the weight behind her words. "What do you mean?" Eliza hesitated for a moment before speaking. "I want more than this. I want more than just the boardroom and the meetings and the pressure. I want to build something with you. Something real. I don't want to keep pretending like I'm the same person I was before. I don't want to hide who I really am anymore." David reached out, taking her hand in his. "You don't have to hide anything from me, Eliza. I'm here, all the way. Whatever comes next, we'll do it together." A few days later, Eliza found herself at a crossroads. The company was expanding, and with it, the demands on her time were growing even more intense. She had to make a decision about the future of her career, and more importantly, her personal life. Eliza had always been fiercely independent. She'd spent years building her empire, fighting tooth and nail to earn respect in a world dominated by men. But now, with David by her side, she was beginning to realize that there was more to life than just success. She had something far more important to lose her chance at true happiness. One evening, as the company celebrated their latest achievement with a gala event, Eliza stood on the balcony of the hotel, watching the city lights flicker below. She was dressed in a sleek black gown, her hair perfectly styled, but she felt a pang of loneliness in her chest. The sound of laughter and clinking glasses filled the air. But it didn't soothe her. David stepped outside, his presence grounding her. He had been by her side throughout the entire process. But tonight, she needed him more than ever. "You okay?" he asked, standing beside her, his voice filled with concern. Eliza glanced at him, her lips curving into a small smile. "I'm fine. Just thinking. About the company?" he asked, his voice light. She shook her head. "No. About us. About what comes next." David took a deep breath, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What are you thinking?" Eliza turned to face him, her expression softening. "I want to stop hiding. I want to stop being the ice queen who can only show up in the boardroom. I want to be the woman who can love, who can be loved." David's heart swelled with emotion. "You don't have to hide that from me, Eliza. I've always seen you, all of you. The strong woman, yes, but also the one who needs someone to lean on." She leaned in, her forehead resting against his. "You make me believe that it's possible to have both a career and love, that I don't have to choose between the two." David smiled softly, his hand cupping her face. "You don't. We'll find a way to make it work. Together." As their relationship deepened, Eliza and David faced a new challenge. The media. Their growing closeness had not gone unnoticed, and soon rumors began to swirl around the company about the two of them. Whispers in the hallways, tabloids speculating about their relationship. It seemed like the world was watching their every move. Eliza had always been the center of attention, but this was different. This was personal. She didn't want to be known as just a powerful CEO or a woman who could have anything she wanted. She wanted to be seen as someone who had a real connection, someone who was more than just a title. One afternoon, as they sat in the office, discussing the latest merger details, Eliza's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and saw a headline that made her stomach churn. "Ice Queen CEO and assistant in secret relationship?" David noticed the change in her demeanor. "What is it?" Eliza stared at the headline, her face a mixture of frustration and confusion. "They're calling us a secret relationship. Like we're hiding something. This isn't some game, David. This is real." David stood up, moving to her side. He placed a hand on her shoulder, his voice calm and reassuring. "You don't owe anyone an explanation. We don't have to hide anything. The truth is, this is between us." Eliza looked up at him, her eyes filled with uncertainty. "But if the world knows, if the company finds out, it could change everything." David met her gaze, unwavering. "We don't need the approval of anyone else. As long as we have each other, that's all that matters." For the first time, Eliza felt a sense of relief. David was right. It wasn't about the media, the rumors, or the expectations. It was about them, about what they had together. Over the next few months, Eliza and David learned to navigate their relationship in the public eye. They faced challenges, but they faced them together, supporting each other every step of the way. Eliza continued to lead the company with confidence, her bond with David giving her the strength she had never known before. As they sat together one evening, watching the sunset from her office, Eliza turned to David, her eyes full of gratitude. "I never thought I could have both," she said softly. "But with you, I feel like I can have it all." David smiled, squeezing her hand. "You can? We can." And in that moment, they both knew that they had found something rare, something worth fighting for. Together, they would face whatever came next, because they knew that no matter the challenge, they could always count on each other. Eliza and David had been through so much in the past few months. Their bond had deepened, and they had become inseparable. But as Eliza's company continued to grow, so did the pressures. The corporate world was unforgiving, and with success came an increasing number of rivals. One day, Eliza received a call from a major shareholder who was displeased with the direction she was taking the company. They had heard rumors about her personal relationship with David, and the tension surrounding their professional and personal lives was beginning to cause a stir within the boardroom. "You're letting personal matters interfere with the company's objectives," the shareholder said bluntly during the call. "I expect a clear separation between your private life and your role as CEO." Eliza clenched her jaw, the words cutting through her. She had worked too hard to let her personal life be used against her. But she knew that this was only the beginning. More people were watching, waiting for her to slip. "I will not let anyone dictate my life," Eliza said firmly. "This is my company, and I will run it as I see fit. Personal matters have no bearing on my ability to lead." But the reality was more complicated. The pressure was starting to take its toll. She was losing sleep, working long hours, and constantly second-guessing every decision. She knew she couldn't keep up this pace forever, and she certainly couldn't keep hiding the relationship with David. It wasn't long before the media began to dig deeper. The rumors became more frequent, the speculation more intense. Eliza's relationship with David was no longer just gossip, it was becoming a full-blown scandal. There were whispers about favoritism, about David's role as an assistant, and whether he was truly qualified to be in the company's inner circle. Eliza couldn't take it anymore. One afternoon, after another grueling day of board meetings and press inquiries, she found herself pacing in her office. The weight of it all was too much. Her mind raced her company, her reputation, and most painfully, her relationship with David were all under fire. David arrived at her office, sensing the tension in the air. He had been aware of the increasing media scrutiny, but he had been doing his best to shield her from the worst of it. He knew how much Eliza had invested in the company, and he couldn't stand seeing her like this. "Eliza," David said gently, stepping into the room. "What's going on? You're burning yourself out." Eliza paused, her eyes tired. She hadn't realized how much the pressure was affecting her until now. She had always prided herself on being strong, on handling everything on her own, but now she felt completely overwhelmed. "I don't know what to do anymore, David," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I feel like I'm losing everything. The company, my dignity, and now, us." David walked over to her, his hands resting on her shoulders. "You don't have to do this alone. You have me, Eliza. I'm not going anywhere." She shook her head, tears welling up in her eyes. "But everything's falling apart. What if I can't fix it? What if the company, the media, everyone, I lose it all?" David leaned down, his face close to hers. "Then we fight for it. Together. You're not alone in this. And as for us, we're fine. We'll be fine. I believe in you, Eliza. You've been fighting for this company for so long. Let me help you fight this." Eliza stared into his eyes, searching for the strength she had lost somewhere along the way. She saw unwavering support, love, and determination. She realized then that she had been running on empty, trying to control everything when she needed to let go. She had David, someone who cared for her, who believed in her when she had forgotten how to believe in herself. "I don't know what I'd do without you," she whispered. "You don't have to," David replied softly. "Because I'm not going anywhere." The following days were a whirlwind of meetings. Eliza had made her decision. She would address the media, the board, and the shareholders. She wasn't going to let the rumors and external pressures dictate her life any longer. It was time to take control, not just of her company, but of her personal life. On the day of the press conference, Eliza stood in front of the podium, the weight of the world on her shoulders. She had prepared herself for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the storm that was about to hit. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted questions, and the tension was palpable. Eliza took a deep breath, looking out over the sea of journalists. She caught a glimpse of David in the crowd, standing with a quiet confidence that gave her strength. "I'm here today to speak openly with all of you," Eliza began, her voice strong. "There has been a lot of speculation surrounding my personal life and its influence on the company. I'm not here to justify my actions, but I will tell you this. I am a person just like any of you. I have the right to live my life, to love, to be happy, just as much as I have the right to lead this company." The room fell silent as Eliza continued. "David is not just an assistant. He is someone who has supported me through the most difficult times in my life. He is someone who has proven his loyalty and dedication not just to me, but to this company." She looked directly into the cameras. "I will not apologize for my relationship with him. I will not apologize for choosing to live authentically. And I will not apologize for the success of this company, which we've built together. If you can't accept that, then you don't understand what it means to be truly successful." The room was quiet for a moment before the questions started coming. But Eliza didn't flinch. She had said what needed to be said. And now, she felt a weight lifting off her shoulders. She had made herself vulnerable, but it was freeing. David was right there beside her the entire time, supporting her every step of the way. She had finally let go of the fear and embraced the truth. She was no longer hiding. She was no longer pretending to be someone she wasn't. The press conference changed everything. The company, once on the edge of crisis, rallied behind Eliza. The media backlash slowly faded as more people began to admire her courage and transparency. Eliza had finally shown the world who she truly was. Not just the cold, calculating CEO, but a woman who had learned to balance her heart and her head. David stood by her side, not as an assistant, but as her equal. Their relationship, once a secret, was now out in the open, and it had only strengthened their bond. They were partners, both in business and in life. Eliza knew that challenges would continue to come. But now, with David by her side, she felt ready for anything. They had weathered the storm together, and she knew that together they could face whatever the future held. As the months passed, the company continued to thrive. Eliza and David worked side by side, leading the company to new heights. But more importantly, they had found something that neither of them had expected: true happiness. They had built a life together, one that balanced love, ambition, and trust. One evening, as they walked through the city together, their fingers intertwined. Eliza turned to David and smiled. "You know, I never thought I'd find someone who truly understood me," she said. "Someone who saw me not just as the CEO, but as a person." David squeezed her hand gently. "I see you, Eliza. The real you. And that's the person I want to spend my life with." Eliza leaned her head on his shoulder, feeling the warmth of his presence. "I think we're ready for whatever comes next." And with that, they stepped forward into the future, hand in hand, knowing that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together.